Hey guys, all right. Can everybody see and hear me? If you can, go ahead and just shoot a comment real fast in the comment box. That way, I know that we're actually live here right now. I think we're having a little bit of a technical difficulty over here, so I just want to make sure real fast that you guys can actually hear and see me before we get going. And yeah, it'd be great to just kind of see who's here. If you guys can chime in too to let me know where you're from. And we will get going here in 1 second, just when we know for sure that we're actually live. So, going to make sure real fast that we're good here. And let's see real fast. Sorry, guys. All right. It looks like it is now coming through here. So, guys, let's get rolling. My name is Mike Mezeul II, and I am an extreme nature and landscape photographer based out of Dallas, Texas. And today I'm going to run by you guys how I utilize Kase and their awesome filters in my workflow. And I'm going to answer any questions you guys may have. And we're even going to have a gear giveaway here at the end. So in the chat, I can see you guys now. Thor, Emily, Flora. Hey guys, how's everybody doing? Michelle from Toronto, Nazuko from Tijuana. Oh man, I wish I was down there right now. That sounds nice to be down on the beach right now. But you guys, so real quick, let me give you a quick intro about myself, what I do. I'm going to share some of my work with you guys and just talk about how Case Filters has essentially kind of changed my photography style. My has really helped me in what I do. So I am going to share my screen with you guys here, and let's make sure, fingers crossed, that this all works here. So let me go ahead, share my screen, and you guys should be seeing a lovely photo of me in front of a good old volcano. So hopefully that's coming through uh, on your guys' end here. But let's get into real fast who I am. Who's Mike? So I am a giant nerd, as I tell everybody. I'm a photographer. I've been doing this now for 22 years. It was never intended to be my career, but I am definitely not complaining that it is my career now. Um, I am in love with photography. I shoot everything I can. I've done everything from photographing professional sports, a lot of aviation, to doing a lot of commercial work. But I am most well known for my work with documenting volcanoes and tornadoes and severe weather. So I also teach landscape workshops and do landscape photography around the world. So basically, I'm busy year round. The thing that I don't shoot, I just don't do babies. That's not my thing. But anything else I can point a camera at legally, I will photograph. So over the years, I have, as I mentioned, become known for my work in severe weather. That's where everything kind of started, photographing tornadoes, supercell thunderstorms, lightning storms, all that goodness. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm from Dallas, Texas, so this is essentially our backyard. Is We have no landscape, but we do have some amazing displays of Mother Nature. So my original background was in atmospheric science, and I took that passion for the atmosphere and combined it with my passion for photography and just said, hey, let's rock and roll and let's document some of the most beautiful storms that we can see, that nature can provide. Uh, so over the years, I focused primarily on severe weather, shooting all over Tornado Alley, which is essentially from basically the Texas Mexico border all the way up into the Canadian border with North Dakota, as far west as Colorado, Montana, Wyoming. So each spring, which is actually right now, I put on anywhere 15 to 20,000 miles in my vehicle documenting these storms. And it is absolutely fascinating. It is one of the coolest subjects to document. And for me, what I enjoy about that, people always like, Mike, can't you photograph something that's not going to kill you? And the answer to that is yes. But I love the fact that every time I go out to photograph these storms, uh, it's something different. And you really only have a small window of time say anywhere between 10, 15 minutes to a couple of hours to photograph these storms and to create an image and to display how beautiful nature is before it literally vanishes into thin air. So, you go to Iceland, Skogafoss, waterfall is always going to be there. You go to Yosemite, and Half Dome is always going to be there. These storms literally vanish into thin air, and you're the only person or one of the few people that actually gets to photograph them before they're never to be seen again. And no storm is the same. And that is what keeps me coming back year after year to document all these different storms that we have here in Tornado Alley. Now, as you guys can expect, and we'll get into this when we start talking filters here, it's a very fast-paced environment. The storms are obviously moving. It's called storm chasing for a reason, because we are usually chasing these storms down. And it doesn't really leave much room for error and much room to fiddle around with gear. And that is where, with my storm photography, I found Kase to be extremely beneficial. And once again, we'll touch on that in a little bit. We're just kind of teasing the work right now. Um, Besides my work in Tornado Alley, I've become known for my work with documenting volcanoes all over the world. Last year alone, documented 4 different volcanoes that were all erupting and active. And just like storms, they are absolutely fascinating to just see how powerful nature is, but also how beautiful it can be. They are very unique. Each volcano is completely different than the other volcano, and every eruption seems to be a little bit different as well. The visuals can be just absolutely quite fascinating, and the diversity, hour to hour, volcano to volcano, day to day, it really keeps you coming back wanting more. So just like storms, I am 100% sold on documenting volcanoes for the rest of my life, because they really are truly fascinating. And it's what is it? Forrest Gump. He said, "You never know what you're going to get," or "Life's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get." So basically, volcanoes and storms are exactly like that. So, I mentioned earlier too, though, when I'm not doing volcanoes or I'm not doing tornadoes, I do landscape photography workshops around the world. I also shoot a lot of different commercial work or just assignment work on landscapes. And uh, filters are a big part of that. So we're going to dive into some of the filters that I use, not only for my volcano work and storm work, but also for my landscape work, because I don't expect everybody that's tuning in to kind of run out and photograph the nearest tornado or volcano. So let's touch on filters. And if you're not familiar with filters, I'm going to kind of dive in with you guys here on how to use them and what the benefits are, and also um, when to use them, things to be careful of, when not to use them, and so on. So the first filter that I touch on is the circular polarizing filter. And we're going to go through some images and examples, and then I'll show you guys at the end, when I'm done sharing my screen, some of the filters that I use from Kase here and the setups as well. So let's just talk more so about why you need these filters and the benefits they have in landscape photography. So for me, it's always necessary to carry around a circular polarizer, a neutral density filter, and a graduated filter. And so the first thing we're touch on is a circular polarizing filter. And these filters are fantastic when you are photographing a subject that has water, or a subject that has reflections in it, or possibly even a rainbow. A circular polarizing filter is going to allow you to kind of cut out any glare that you may have. So, for instance, when I'm shooting this waterfall here in Iceland, the light's coming in from the top of the frame. So, what I had is a pretty harsh glare on some of the highlights and some of the rocks and some of the, you guys can see that moss and grass, all of that had mist on it. So, when the light's coming in directionally like that, you can tend to get a glare. So, using a circular polarizing filter, I put that filter on and rotated it. And what it does is it essentially negates the glare and allows you to kind of see through that glare to the subject that you have there in front of you. So when I used a polarizer here, it allowed me to cut out the glares on the rocks, on the mist, or on the moss and the highlights, and just give an overall cleaner look to the image and a more contrasty look. Now, a key thing that you need to keep in mind when you're using a circular polarizing filter is that it works best when the sun or the light is 45 to say 90 degrees away from your subject. So if you're looking directly into the sun, or the sun is directly behind you and you're looking away from it, a polarizing filter isn't going to be the best option for you. Now, 45 degrees, 90 degrees, with your light coming in at that angle, a polarizing filter is definitely going to help cut out those glares and those reflections. Another example here, rainbows. Polarizing filters are fantastic for rainbows. So when I'm out there photographing severe weather or monsoon season, polarizing filter is always sitting right there in my pocket, because as soon as I see a hint of a rainbow, I'm going to throw that polarizer on. And what a polarizer does for a rainbow is it actually helps you increase the saturation of the colors and create more contrast in the sky. So I mentioned just a second ago, when you're looking at the sun, it's not a good opportunity to use a polarizer. And when the sun is 180 degrees behind you or away from your subject, it's not the best option. That goes out the window with a rainbow. So if a rainbow, you have to have the sun directly behind you. So for that rainbow, put on that polarizer, and that will definitely help enhance those colors. And they're kind of fun to mess around with polarizers too, because you'll rotate it and you'll notice that the rainbow is getting more and more saturated and those colors are coming out richer and richer. And then all of a sudden the rainbow will vanish. And it's at that point that you know that you need to kind of backtrack a little bit with your polarizer because you've reached your maximum polarization. So whenever I'm doing storms, polarizer is always in my pocket. And it may not even be a full rainbow. Like in this instance here, I was out shooting lightning for the Arizona monsoon season, and I had this very, very small hint of a rainbow. And I knew that without a polarizer, I wouldn't really pick it up. So I threw the polarizer on, rotated it. It didn't obviously reveal the entire rainbow. It revealed just a segment, but it really, really enhanced those colors and helped me capture the little hint of a rainbow that was there. So once again, it's not going to create a whole rainbow, but it will pull out the colors and enhance them to help you get more out of that rainbow there. So I feel like I've said rainbow like 1,000 times already. Real quick too, you guys, keep chiming in on the chat if you have any questions, because I'm watching that. If you have any Q&A stuff that you want answered, I'll be more than happy to help you out. And also go ahead and chime in where you're from too, because we are going to give away some Kase gear at the end of this. And I think we're going to use where you guys are from to kind of help pick a winner here. So one more look here. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of the subjects I shoot are very, very fast moving. So traditional filters, the screw-on filters, they were a hassle. And with as much as I am trying to get in and out of the car really quickly, in the case of tornadoes and storms, and throw on a filter, the last thing I want to do is take the time to screw on a filter or worry about it getting cross-threaded. So the Kase filters are absolutely wonderful because they're obviously magnetic. And so here in this scene, I had a beautiful tornado moving off just to my east, and I saw the rainbow start to come out. Grabbed the polarizer, threw it on, rotated it, rainbow came out, even the double rainbow came out even more. Took this shot and had to get back in the car and haul to the south, because if you guys look closely, all those little white things coming down, those are actually hailstones the size of almost tennis balls. So it's pretty big hail that you don't want to sit out there and get pummeled by. So if you're trying to fiddle around with screwing on a filter, that is going to cut your opportunity out pretty substantially to get an image. So here, as soon as I saw the rainbow, took the filter, popped it on the front of my camera, stuck like a charm. I'm able to get my shot, get into safety, and get it out of there really quickly. Circular polarizers, one more little bonus hint here with why you should use them and how you should use them. They are fantastic for black and white photographs. So a lot of people tend to kind of shun away from black and white these days. I love it. So I definitely still shoot more monochromatic images. But using a polarizer definitely helps kind of deepen or enrich the contrast. So you're getting deeper blacks and whiter whites with a polarizer for black and white. So when you're shooting monochromatic, don't be afraid to throw in a polarizing filter and kind of play around with it, rotate it obviously, and see how it can enhance the contrast within your scene. So that is one of my favorite little tricks and tips when I'm shooting monochromatic scenes, is to throw in a polarizer, because it definitely helps deepen and create more contrast, and that's what you want in your monochromatic images. All right, so next up, I was kind of, when I was presenting or getting ready for this presentation, I was kind of figuring out how to break this down, because I tend to use these next two filters together in a combination. So we're going to talk about neutral density filters and graduated filters together here. So, and once we're done sharing the images here, I'll show you guys some of the gear that I use through the live stream, and that will hopefully make a little bit more sense here. So graduated filters, let's touch on those first. These are filters, whether you're familiar with them or not, just to kind of refresh. They are filters that are essentially darker on one half and clear on the other half. And there's a transition zone where it goes from that darker to lighter colors uh, and very softly, or you can get a hard edge grad filter where it's essentially just that, hard edge, where it's a very abrupt stop from the dark to the light. I prefer to use a soft grad filter for most of my work. The reason being is because it just works well with blending. It does a way better job with blending the horizon line than a hard edge grad. So a hard edge grad is only really beneficial, in my opinion, for ocean scenes where you have a very hard edged horizon. If you have anything protruding into the horizon, a soft grad is going to be the way to go. So here I am in Hawaii, and it was very tough to be in such a beautiful place and have to go out and shoot, but somebody has to do it. So here on this scene, I used two different filters. I used a graduated filter, a soft grad, and a neutral density filter. I lied. I used three filters on the shot. I also used a circular polarizing filter. So let me explain how I used those filters and why I used them. So the circular polarizing filter, the sun's coming in almost 45 degrees here. So I put that on to kind of help reduce some of the glares and the reflections on the surface of the rocks. So it just made it a little bit cleaner. Now, the neutral density filter, if you're not familiar with those are essentially a very dark piece of glass, and they come in 3 stops, 6 stops, 9 stops, 10 stops. And these dark pieces of glass will allow you to slow your shutter speed down if need be. So for here, I used a 3-stop neutral density filter to help create that longer exposure. So that longer exposure allowed me to blur the water and kind of create that silky look to that water going back into this well here. Now, the final filter I used is a soft grad filter, because the foreground is very dark. It's a lot of lava, actually, ironically. But with it being so dark and having a very bright sky, that's a lot of dynamic range. So for this shot here, I used that soft grad filter, and I slid it in to where the transition zone was kind of right on the horizon here. And that helped darken the sky and create a more balanced exposure. So that's when you're going to want to use a soft grad filter, is when you have a very bright sky and a dark foreground. To help balance out that, instead of possibly bracketing, you can use that graduated filter. Or vice versa. If you have a very bright foreground, like say like you're in White Sands National Park, and a darker sky, and it's like you're shooting maybe twilight, you want to balance it out, you can flip that graduated filter upside down and help balance your exposure that way. Another shot here, the cool thing about graduated filters is that they can be rotated. They don't just have to be perfectly vertical with the frame. So here, what I did, had a really bright sky, really dark foreground. So I took that grad filter and had the darker portion hovering over the sky with that soft grad transitioning over the rocks here. So that helped balance out this exposure. I think we got a question real fast. So neutral density filter for lightning shots. We'll get into that in 1 second. I've got a photo to explain how I utilize neutral density filters with my lightning shots. But for here, soft grad, coming across the top right of the frame to help balance out that really bright sky with that really darker foreground. There we go. All right, so now how do I use neutral density filters for lightning shots? Well, lightning during the night is relatively easy to capture by utilizing long exposures. Lightning during the day or during twilight is a little bit more challenging because you still have a lot of ambient light. So you want to, in order to capture lightning, you want to utilize a somewhat long exposure. Now, lightning is a topic I could talk on all day long, but just kind of Cliff Notes version here. Lightning, longer exposures, and luck. Lots of luck is involved with capturing lightning. But the key thing is long exposure. So during the day and into twilight, sometimes you can get maybe a half a second to a 1 or 2 second long exposure by simply stepping your ISO all the way down and bring your aperture all the way up and cutting out as much ambient light as possible. But I tend to use a 3 or 6 stop neutral density filter as well to give myself that longer exposure. So by utilizing a 3 or 6 stop, I'm able to increase my shutter times from maybe 2 seconds or 1 second to about 5 or 8 or possibly sometimes 10 seconds. And that definitely increases the probabilities or the odds of me being able to capture a lightning strike. Now, even though I've given myself that really long exposure or that longer exposure, it is up to nature to provide the lightning strike and the place in which I pointed my camera. And that's a whole nother topic in itself. ND filters are fantastic filters to utilize during brighter times of the day if you want to blur cloud motions or if you also want to blur, say, water and waterfalls. So um, some of you guys may recognize this spot. It's a pretty famous spot in Iceland. But this area right here, I was shooting into the sun, still relatively bright outside. So it was very hard to get a slower shutter speed here or a longer shutter speed. So throwing on a 6 stop neutral density filter here allowed me to achieve a couple seconds for my exposure time. And therefore that resulted in me being able to kind of create some motion and motion blur to these waterfalls here because these waterfalls aren't necessarily raging per se. So if you shoot them with a faster shutter speed, they're not as powerful in the image. So creating a longer exposure here and creating that kind of streamlined look to the water, that definitely adds a whole nother element to the frame. And that is only possible this time of day by throwing on a circular, or not, sorry, not a circular, a ND filter. What I was going to say about a circular polarizing filter, though, is in this instance, looking into the sun, it's not going to be beneficial. So that is why in this frame here, I only used a neutral density filter and I didn't even use a grad filter because the problem here is I have this mountain right here protruding up. So if I used a grad filter here, the grad filter would darken down the sky, but it would also darken down the mountain. So in this case, what I had to do is bracket for the sky. Getting creative with volcanoes is always fun and challenging. But here I was kind of just hanging out with the volcano in Iceland that was erupting last year. And I saw this kind of cool, little like almost like lava waterfall, if you want to call it that. And it was really bright outside. It was, I think, probably like 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I didn't have the opportunity to, without a filter, get a long exposure. But I threw on a 6 stop filter here, and I was able to get a 1 second long exposure and kind of create a like I said, like a little waterfall, create some motion to this lava that was moving through the field in front of me. And it's just a fun way to get a little bit creative during the middle of the day by using those neutral density filters. Now, I mentioned earlier you have 3 stop, 6 stop, 9 stop, 10 stop. You have a variety of different neutral density filters, which are going to be different darknesses, or they're going to cut out different amounts of light. So sometimes it's really fun to get creative with the length or the duration of your shutter speeds when you have very fast moving clouds. So this was the case here in Iceland. I had this really awesome sky and the clouds are moving left to right at a rather quick pace. So I threw on a 10 stop neutral density filter here. And this was a lot of light that I was cutting out. So in order to compensate for that, I needed a very long exposure time. So here, this is a 3 minute long exposure. Now, this would not be able to be created without the use of a neutral density filter. So by using that neutral density filter and cutting out 10 stops of light, I was then able to get a 3 minute long exposure, which creates a really cool and dramatic look to the sky. And you can see all the motion going in the clouds as well. Have you ever lost any gear when you shoot in the volcano? Oh, not my finest moments, but I have lost some gear. I have melted the feet off the tripod, also warped tripod legs. I've melted my drone last year in Iceland. I also ironically melted my pants in Iceland last year. So shooting by volcanoes is definitely a hazard, and you have to be on your toes because if you're not familiar with lava, it's quite hot. All right, so one more shot here, I do believe, for talking about neutral density filters. Uh, you know, with water, it's sometimes really fun to do super long exposures. So you guys saw a couple images earlier that were, 1, maybe 2, 3 second long exposures. Here, this is another example of doing a 3 or 4 minute long exposure. So I threw on the 10 stop filter. So it cuts out 10 stops of light. There's a lot of light. I also took a grad filter and I slid it down to just above the boat to kind of tone down the sky. And a very, very long exposure revealed this frosted look to the water, which therefore kind of it negates all the textures in the water or the ripples from the wind, and I could find those distracting at times. So by creating that frosted over look to the water, I am now able to push my audience's eye or refocus them on the subject, which is the boat. I don't want them to be distracted by any sort of textures in the water or ripples or weird highlights or anything like that. So here, I think this was 3, maybe 4 minutes long. I can't remember to be off the top of my head, but I do remember it's a 10 stop filter with that soft grad at the top. And it's just another way to get creative out there. And, you definitely need some motion in the water in order to kind of give it that frosted look. If you go out on a day where the water is completely still and you throw on a 10 stop filter and shoot for 4 or 5 minutes, you're not really going to notice that much of a difference. But if you go out there on a day where you have a little bit of chop to the water, that 10 stop filter and that long exposure will give you this nice kind of frosted look over. I'm just going to check real quick, you guys here. Thank you guys all for the kudos. I'm seeing some really nice comments for just the work here. So thank you guys. That means a lot. Okay, so best lens for shooting the moon with a D750. So it all depends on how you want to shoot the moon. I'm assuming you want that really close up look to the moon. So obviously the longer the lens, the better. But you don't need to go out there and rent the 800 millimeter lens. You can shoot the moon with a 400 millimeter lens, and then teleconverters are your friends too. So if you take a teleconverter between the longest focal length you can get, it's sometimes depending on the teleconverter, like if a 1.4, 1.8, or two times teleconverter, you can double that focal length. So yeah, the moon, it's kind of open-ended question, depends on how close you want to get. You can also get really, really advanced and connect to a telescope to shoot the moon. I know a lot of guys who do that and they track with the moon and they're using a telescope. So for me, when I shoot the moon though, I'm typically shooting 400 or 500 millimeters, and then I might have to crop in a little bit, or I'll do 400 millimeters with a 1.8 or 2 times teleconverter to just help give me that extended reach there. But biggest tip I can give you, the longest lens that you can go with, and also make sure you're shooting on a tripod, because that also helps keep the image as sharp as possible. Okay, I am practicing with ducks and wildflowers. Awesome, Emily. Yeah, so ducks and wildflowers, those are always fun subjects to do. My biggest tip there is to, when you're photographing ducks, get low, get eye level with them. That makes for a definitely a more intimate scene. Same really with any wildlife. You kind of want to be eye level. It always creates a more intimate moment. Jennifer, will a phone or tablet work? So depends on what you're doing, what you want to have your end product as. But I do know some actually some very talented just phone photographers out there. But if I'm being completely honest, I will say that there's nothing quite like shooting on a DSLR or a mirrorless. Okay, so another quick example here. This is a shot I took just a few days ago while out on one of my storm chasing tours. This shot right here, we got a beautiful supercell thunderstorm moving overhead, and there was lots of lightning. But you could also notice the problem here. There's lots of light. So the sun was setting, so the ambient light was quite strong. So in this case, I threw on the 6-stop neutral density filter that I have, and that allowed me to get a 1 second long exposure here. And with this, I was already time lapsing, so I just shot as many photos as possible at that 1 second long exposure. And I was very, very fortunate to get some bolts with that. But without that neutral density filter, there's no way that I would have been able to capture the scene because I would never have been able to get my exposure times long enough in order to capture the lightning. Another example here of all three filters being used. So this is from the Diamond Ice Beach in Iceland. And here I've got the circular polarizer on. The sun's coming in at around 45 degrees. So I'm using the circular polarizer to help cut down the glare and the reflection off the highlights on the rocks and on the beach. I'm also using a 3-stop neutral density filter here to help lengthen my exposure time and get that nice drag with the shutter for the water receding back out to the ocean. And I'm also using a graduated filter that is floating with the transition zone right here on the horizon. And that's helping darken and deepen those colors in the sky while also allowing the foreground to be balanced with the sky nice and proper. Another example here. Now, a lot of people say, hey, this is photoshopped. This is not. This is really what the sky was doing. And it was quite amazing to see in person here. So once again, two filters on this shot here using I believe this was a 6-stop neutral density filter and also a zero point 0.6 soft grad. So the soft grad was actually lying right here on the horizon line. So it's helping darken the sky. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, wait, no, the grad filter is up here. No, that is actually just nature being really, really cool and doing awesome things. So that was not the grad filter there. The grad filter was hovering on the horizon here. And the neutral density filter was allowing me to lengthen my exposure time to about a third of a second. And what I was trying to do is exactly what I got here in this shot. It took a lot of trial and error, but doing that 1/3 second of a second shot allowed me to capture the curling over of the waves as they were crashing onto the shore here. And that is what I wanted to do here because there wasn't really any big wave action. You could see the rest of the ocean is rather calm. And I felt like without that motion blur, the water was rather boring. So by creating a longer exposure, 1/3 of a second here, I was able to capture that motion or create that motion with the little waves that were coming in, and it added a whole nother element to this frame here. Another example of using two filters here. So this is a grad filter, which if you guessed that it's sitting right on the horizon, you are correct. And also a 3-stop neutral density filter here. This is once again kind of the same technique as earlier or the previous frame, giving me the ability to shoot about a third of a second long exposure. So capturing some of the motion in the waves, but also getting some of the water that's dripping off this ice here to create a nice kind of motion blur to it. And then the grad filter is helping keep the balance between the foreground and the sky, which the foreground in this case was very dark and the sky was very bright because of the sunlight coming through. So putting that grad filter up there allowed me to really balance this exposure quite nicely. All right, I see a couple questions popped in, so let's answer those real quick. Where can I get the camera you were talking about? So Jennifer, there's so many great cameras out there these days. I shoot primarily with Nikon now. So, the Nikon Z6 II is a fantastic camera. The Nikon Z7 II is a fantastic camera. The Nikon Z50 is a fantastic camera. All are different price points. So I recommend B and H Photo for all my camera gear. They are fantastic. They're out of New York, and they usually have a lot of stuff in stock that some other places tend to not have in stock. So B&H Photo is where I would recommend starting your camera journey. Flora, how to get clear ice in your beach shot, how to get the correct light. So with the clear ice, there's two little tricks here. So go back real fast. Clear ice, you have to hunt for it. It's like an Easter egg hunt when you go to these places. There's clear ice that's been really, really polished, and then there's not so clear ice. And it also depends on where it came from on the glacier too. Some of the ice is definitely a different density, so it doesn't appear to be as clear. But you can definitely use a circular polarizer as well to kind of negate some of the glare on the ice, and that will help give it kind of that quote unquote diamond look or that clearer look. So a lot of searching around and then utilizing a polarizer if possible to help kind of negate the glare, and that gives it a little bit clearer look. So another example here of the power of a graduated filter. So no polarizer here, no neutral density filter, none of that's needed. Here, what I needed is control over the sky. So using a neutral density filter that dropped down right on top of the mountain here helps definitely control the light and darken it up there when you have this really vibrant sunset and you have a lot of dark and a lot of shadows and blacks in the foreground. So a grad filter was extremely beneficial here in this scene. Nikki, thank you. So yeah, guys, so those are some examples of some of my work and how I have used the filter. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick. Sorry, I got to get away from the photos, but I want to show you guys some of the gear to kind of put the gear to what I've talked about here. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and unfortunately, you guys are going to have to see me again here. So let's talk about the three filters. Let me show you guys real quickly what they all look like, and then I'll show you the setup on my cameras. And if you guys have any other questions, feel free to throw them in the chat, and then we will do a giveaway. So real quick, first one, circular polarizer. Let me make sure I've got the right one here. So this is a circular polarizer, okay? So I know it doesn't really do too much for you guys looking at it through the computer, but this is what I put on the front of my lens to negate glares, for rainbows, to add a little bit more contrast to my black and white images. And what you do is you simply rotate it. I don't know if it's going to do it on this print back here. Not too much, but you rotate it and you can definitely see through your viewfinder or through your LCD a huge difference in the glares, the shine off of rocks, the shine off of moss, stuff like that. The other filter I have touched on, let me grab where to go. Of course, I've got all my stuff organized right before I get on, and then when I get on with you guys, it all goes scattered. So, all right, here we go. So we've got three different neutral density filters here that I'm going to show you guys. And here we go. So the first one is going to be a 3-stop neutral density filter. So as I mentioned, it is a black piece of glass. So if I hold this up, it cuts out 3 stops of light, and you guys can still see me right on through that filter. This is great for maybe twilight light or right after sunset or possibly right before sunset. These filters are fantastic. Then next up, you've got a 6-stop neutral density filter. So if I hold it up, it's a little bit more challenging to see me, but you can still see me, but it's cut out 6 stops of light. So 3 more stops than that previous one here. So once again, it's kind of hard to see me through it, but you can still somewhat see me through it. Now, last but not least, you've got the 10-stop filter. And if I hold that up, you can't even see it anymore. I'm waving to you guys back here. You can't see a darn thing through it. So it has cut out 10 stops of light. And this is a fantastic lens for obtaining those, or fantastic filter, I'm sorry, for obtaining those really long, exposure times, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. So that's the neutral density set that I use. It's a 3-stop, a 6-stop, and a 10-stop. And each one has its own unique purpose and time to use. So 3-stop is typically right after sunrise or right before sunset. The 6th stop is maybe an hour or so after or an hour or so before sunset. And then the 10th stop is middle of the day. Or if I want to get really, really creative with super long exposures, then I'll throw in that 10th stop. Now, last but not least, you've got the graduated filters. So if I'm gonna hold this guy up here, I'm trying to find a good spot to show you guys. So you guys can see right here, oh, there we go. So you guys can see that it's darker on the top here and clear on the bottom. And obviously you can position this any way you want, rotate it whichever way you want. But this right here, this one is a 0.9 soft grad. I'm trying to, there we go. Everything's reversed on the screen. So there we go. So you guys can see how that cuts out at the top there, a little bit darker at the top, clear at the bottom. So what I would do here in this case, and I'll show you the holder, is if I had like a really bright sunset and a really dark, lava beach foreground, I would slide this in front of my lens, obviously, and I'd line up the soft grad transition in a spot that is hovering right above the horizon line, and that would help darken the sky and help balance the overall exposure. Now, this is the 0.9. I also have a 0.6 soft grad. So this guy right here, and you can see, there we go. It's not as dark at the top, so this is a little bit softer or a little bit less light at the top to cut out. So when I have really, really vibrant sunsets, I tend to go with the 0.9. When it's more pastel skies, I'll go with the 0.6. What would be the best filter for fireworks? Honestly, you don't really need a filter for fireworks. Fireworks are typically just going to be long exposures. It's nighttime or twilight, so you can get away with a few seconds, if not more. So filters for fireworks, it's not really, there's not really a need for those there. Okay, so now let me show you guys the holders here, because this is the cool part. This is what I absolutely love about Kase. So I'm shooting on I've got the Z9 and the Z7 II that I shoot on, but my primary lens is the Nikon 14-24Z. So the Nikon 14-24Z has a lens hood that is built in, or not built in, but you can put on, and it's got threads on the inside here where you can take the ring that comes with the Kase filters, thread it on. It's extremely thin and you don't even notice it's there, but what it does is it creates the ability for you to simply just drop on a filter at any time and go. So for example, if I need a 10-stop filter extremely fast, all I have to do is that, and the filter's on, and it's not going anywhere. And I can shake this camera all around all day long, and that magnet's gonna hold that filter on there. And then when I'm done, pop it off. Back in the case we go, back on the road we go. So this is awesome. I mean, it's so simple, but it is extremely awesome. And like I mentioned, when I had that tornado that I was shooting with the rainbow, all I did is I had, sorry, Kase, you guys aren't gonna wanna hear this, but I had the filter just sitting in my pocket, not in an actual case. And I just grabbed it out, threw it on, took my shot, and went just like that. So that is one of the most beautiful things ever, is having that very quick setup to be able to just keep that ring on the filter or the ring on the camera at all times. And it doesn't matter if it's the Nikon 14-24, the 24-70, the 70-200. They make rings for all of them. They also make these step-up rings. So if you go with, say, the 112 millimeter filters for the Nikon 14-24, you don't have to get the smaller filters. All you have to do is get the step-up rings that it won't work on this lens, but it'll screw on to the lens that you need, and then you simply drop the filters on there. George, what size is the ring for the 14-24? It is 112 millimeters. Now, that is if you are not using the grad filter system. So if you want to use grad filters, then you're gonna wanna go this setup. And this setup I actually just got from Kase last week, I believe. It's awesome. So if you wanna throw on grad filters, combined with, say, a circular polarizer, combined with a neutral density or whatever, Kase now has a grad filter setup. And the way this works is goes right onto your lens, like so, okay? And then you lock it down. It's a little knob I'm trying to show you guys on the back side here. I don't know if you can see that. There's a little knob that tightens this filter down, just like that. or the filter holder. So you tighten this down and now you have a holder, right? Okay. So the cool thing about it is this holder is nice and magnetic, and it's got a little indentation here for your circular filters as well. So say like in this case, I want to throw on a polarizing filter. I grab the polarizing filter, drop it in just like that. It's not going anywhere. That's locked in. If I need to rotate the polarizer, there's a rotator right here, and you guys can see that that filter is rotating around. So that is super easy. Now, say like I want to throw on a grad filter on top of this. Well, I have my grad filter, I have my filter holder, and all I gotta do, boom, like that. I could slide it up, slide it down. Once again, it's not going anywhere. That magnet is really strong. So what I would do here, in this case, I would get my horizon line lined up exactly where I want it. So say like there, tighten down this red knob right here, and that filter is now locked down, not going anywhere. The magnet securing it, and you also have the locking mechanism here as well. And this is beautiful. This is how I chase now all storm season. I've got this set up ready to go in the car. I could have a circular polarizer, I could have an ND, I could have a grad filter, all thrown onto my camera within a matter of seconds. So does that holder come in different sizes? I do believe the holder comes in different sizes for the different threads on the different lenses, obviously. So if you have a 77 millimeter, you get one that works there, works with that. Or once again, you can get the biggest filter holder. So in this case, 112 millimeters for, or the 14 to 24 here, and you can get the step down rings to be able to use that holder on the smaller threaded lenses like the 77 millimeter or the 72 millimeter or the 62 millimeter. So it is absolutely possible to use one holder across the board with the step down rings. So yeah, so that is just absolutely beautiful. So now if you guys are ever wondering what I'm using to get my shots, it is this setup here. It's the Kase Wolverine with the armor filters. And this is my go-to setup now for all my landscape, for my storm, for my volcanoes, all that goodness. And if I need to get the filter off, all I do, unscrew that, and the filter pops right off, back in the case, back on the road we go. Super, super easy, super fast and quick, and that definitely makes a difference in what I do. And also, it's just so nice to have everything all compact. Like for example, this is my filter bag. I don't have a huge box anymore full of filters. I don't have tons of different things in different cases. It's all really tiny and compact, super easy to use. So yeah, those are the filters, you guys, that I utilize. If you have any other questions, feel free to drop them into the Q&A here. I'm gonna just kind of scrub back real fast, make sure that I haven't missed anything. Nikki, is it, okay, hold on, let's see. Okay, do I need to adjust the ISO every time if I use ND filters? So yeah, so you're gonna have to, with neutral density filters, obviously it's cutting out quite a bit of light depending on the amount of stops, 3 stop, 6 stop, 9 stop. It's going to affect your exposure. So you're gonna have to compensate for light somehow, whether it's by bringing your ISO up or lengthening your shutter or dropping your aperture down. You're gonna have to compensate for the amount of light that's being cut out, but I can't tell you which one of those, whether it's ISO, aperture, or shutter, that you're going to compensate with, because it all depends on the image you're trying to create. I hope that makes sense. Michelle, you tried the Master Kit 3 for the circular grad filters so that you move the horizon. What are your thoughts of one over the other? So definitely this guy right here is what I like to use. And the reason being is, you guys might be familiar, and I hope I'm nailing your question here, but the reason being is there are definitely circular grad filters out there, but the problem is that with a circular grad filter, for example, say like we're using this guy right here, the horizon line is going to be right in the middle. So you can't move it up or down. And that's going to really limit your compositions. So with the rectangles here, the 100 and I believe it's 150 by 100 millimeters here, you're able to slide it up and down and that will allow you to, maybe tilt down more for your composition, tilt up more for your composition, but compensate the filter for that. So yeah, I think that's where you're going with that. If not, let me know. But that is my suggestion for the setup. Dean, awesome education. Your time is always perfect. Oh, thank you, Dean. What you don't see, Dean, is all the photos that are out of focus or blue skies or me running from lava. Uh, so yeah, there's a lot of failures as well. So, but thank you for the kudos there. Uh, Michelle, with the master kit, you can move the circular grad up and down. So I would still go away from circular grads. I would stay with the rectangular grads. I feel like you have so much more freedom that way, more flexibility that way with the circular grads. So if you guys haven't chimed in yet, I'm going to check in with Kase real fast here. If you guys haven't chimed in yet for winning some gear, let me know where you're from. And I think we're going to very shortly pick out a winner here. And if you do win, you need to go ahead and let me know a good email address, or let me double check with Kase real fast here. Actually, I'll give you the email in which you need to send to Kase to let them know, hey, you won. So, you know what? I was actually thinking about this, and we were talking before getting on here about how to do the giveaway. So I'm gonna give you guys a quiz actually, and I'm gonna trust that nobody's gonna cheat. And the first person to give me the correct answer, I think I'm gonna pick you guys as the winner. So let's go ahead and make sure we're not missing any questions before I ask you this. Ryan, that magnetic filter holder is awesome. Yeah, dude, it really is. I've walked around, I've done hikes with my tripod and camera on my over my shoulder with the filters on, and they haven't bounced off or fallen off or anything like that. I've also had these filters in some pretty gnarly conditions with wind, and they've all stuck on really well. So that right there is enough for me to go, these are wonderful. And then add in how fast you can get them on and off, and how much smaller they are than a huge big setup. Like I used to use leaf filters in the past, and the setup for the Nikon 14 to 24 was just absolutely horrible. Took forever. It was a whole bunch of work to get that holder on. This is just absolutely perfect. Kase nailed it. And that is not a paid endorsement. Like I'm really like supporting this gear because I've used it and I believe in it. So okay, guys, any last questions? Go ahead and get your last questions in here, and then we'll go ahead and ask the question to pick our winner. And it's always a fun one. I've asked this question on a few other giveaways, so we'll see here. But all right, if nobody has any other questions, I'm not seeing anything else. Lindsborg, Kansas. Hey, I have actually been through Lindsborg. Um, I spent a lot of time in Kansas last week actually on my tornado tour. So with that, you guys, real fast, I'm going to pitch that. If you guys are interested in any workshops, all my workshops are sold out this year. I do have monsoon lightning workshops open for next year. In order to look up some information on those, you need to visit my website. That is Mike, M-I-K-E, Mez, M-E-Z, photography.com. And I will put that in the comments for you guys as well. Once again, all my 22 workshops are sold out, but my 2023 workshops, I have one spot left for Kauai, and I have some monsoon lightning workshops as well that are open. The Tornado Alley ones, unfortunately, are sold out. So with that being said, you guys, all right, first person to answer this question correctly without Googling, or the closest within, we'll give it a minute or two, you guys are going to win some gear, and I'll give you Kase's email. Reach out to them. They'll let you know which gear you've won, and we will go from there. So the question to you guys is, on average, how wide is a lightning bolt? First person to chime in with the correct answer is going to win some gear. How wide, on average, is a lightning bolt? Everybody's quickly going, all right, well, should I Google it or not? Pencil thick. All right, that's 3 inches. All right, guys, let's see. What else you got? 1.15 millimeters, 2 to 3 centimeters. You guys gonna make me do some math here real fast because now I got to look it up. 'Cause you guys are all right. So Ryan, congrats, man. You nailed it here. We're gonna go with 2 to 3 centimeters. So technically, lightning is 1 inch wide on average. So that comes out to 2.54 centimeters. So Ryan, you nailed 2 to 3 centimeters. That is close enough, and that works for me. So you guys, Ryan, I will put in the email or in the messages here who to email. Uh, you guys, thank you for tuning in. I hope you guys learned a few things on filters and also got inspired to get out there and shoot. And also, really, if you can, go and pick up some Kase filters as well, because they are the best filters that I have ever used. And I just couldn't be happier with them. So, Ryan, let's go ahead. I will shoot. Let me see if I can actually shoot you a message here. Can't shoot you a message, but here is the email. Shoot the guys over at Kase an email. Let them know that you guessed the answer correctly. Oh, Kase is chiming in. There you go. So now you get to see it 3 different times here. And Marianne, I know if you look at the chat, Ryan beat you just by a smidgen there. So you guys, thank you for tuning in. Be sure to go follow Kase on Instagram, on Facebook. I am on Instagram at Mike Mezeul II. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to always reach out to me as well. And I'd be more than happy to help you guys out. So until next time, you guys, get out there and shoot. Everybody be safe. And thanks for tuning in.